Hello everyone. In this session we are going to understand the concept of constructor. Very important concept. So far we have seen that whenever we created the object of a class we called the constructor. So what is a constructor basically? It is a block of code very similar to a method that gets executed automatically whenever we instantiate the class, whenever we create the object, and the name of the constructor is very similar to the name of the class. There are some concepts involved over here. So what we'll do is we'll take an example, and along with that example let us understand all these concepts. Okay, so instead of I explain you all the concepts theoretically, it's better to take an example and I explain you all these concepts along with the example. So let us read the example. What we want to do is we want to create a class. The name of the class is road toll, toll, to calculate the toll of a vehicle. That's our class name, and then in that class we want to create the member variables as the vehicle type and the vehicle number of tires, and then depending upon the number of tires for a vehicle the toll will be calculated. So there will be a method that will calculate the toll for a vehicle. So if a vehicle has two tires like a bike, and then it will have no toll, it's free. If the vehicle has four tires, a car, then the toll is 10. If the vehicle has more than four tires like a truck or something, then the amount for toll is $20. Okay, so there will be a method and there will be two variables in the class. Now after that we will create a main class that has a main method basically. So road toll main class with a main method, and in that main method we will create the object of a road toll class. So similar to whatever we have been doing so far, and with respect to that object we will assign the vehicle type and number of tires, and then we'll call the method to find the toll for the vehicle. Okay, we'll call that particular method that calculates the toll. Up till this point everything is very same whatever we have seen so far. Now the next line is to create the constructor in the class. So far we have not created any constructor, and you might wonder then how we were able to create the object of the class, because when we say that constructor is required to instantiate a class to create the object of the class, then how we were able to create the object, because we have not created any constructor in any of the classes that we have created. And the answer is, if we do not create a constructor, then Java assumes a default constructor. We'll also understand that concept along with this example, but in this case we will create an explicit constructor, and then using that constructor we'll create another object of the class and see how it works. Okay, so let us begin with the example. Let us create a road toll class. And in this road toll class we want to create two variables, the type and number of tires. So I'm going to create a string variable type. I'm not going to assign any initial value to that. Second is an integer, say tires count, and also I'm going to keep it non-initialized in the beginning. And let's create the method to calculate the toll depending upon number of tires. So let me call it as a public void calculate toll, and we have the conditions over here. If the count is 2 then toll is 0, count is 4 is toll is 10, count is greater than 4 then the toll is 20. So we'll implement a if statement over here. If tires count is equal to 2, then we will display a message saying that your toll amount is 0. And we'll use else if kind of a structure here. If tires count is equal to 4, then the toll is $10. And else if tires count is greater than 4, then your toll amount is 20. So I'm just going to replace here to 20. So three conditions: equal to 2 is 0, equal to 4 is 10, and greater than 4 is 20. Let's also create another else over here just to tackle the condition. If someone enters number of tires as 0 or negative, then we'll display a message saying that incorrect tire count. So simply two variables and a method that calculates the toll depending upon the number of tires. Next line says create the road toll main class with a main method, and then create the object of the road toll class, and then provide the values to the member variables and call the method. So let's go ahead and create the main class that has the main method. With the main method, and over here let's create the object of road toll class. So first declare the object, and with respect to this object we want to assign the values. So rt1 dot type, I'm going to call it as sedan, and rt1 dot tires count, I'm going to say 4, and then with respect to the object let us calculate the toll. Okay, very similar to whatever we have been doing so far. When we run this program, it's going to say the your toll amount is $10. If I say something else like a truck with 6 tires, it's going to say your toll amount is $20. Very same. Now concentrate on this part over here. We already discussed that whenever we instantiate the object, first we declare the object with the class type, and then we use the new keyword, and then we call the constructor. Now this is a constructor that is already there in the road toll class, but we cannot see it. It is invisible. And when I say it is invisible, I simply want to say that if you do not create an explicit constructor in a class, then Java assumes a default constructor, something like this, something like road toll, and then open close brackets. A constructor does not have any return type, like void or any string or integer. It doesn't have any return type because constructor is not supposed to return any value, so we no need to provide any return type. So what happens is, if you do not specify a constructor, then Java assumes a default constructor like this. So in this case, there is no lines that get executed when this code is when this constructor is called. Let us put some lines. Now let us create a constructor like this without any argument. So yes, constructor also can have some arguments, which we'll see it in a few seconds. For now, let's just add a line over here that constructor is executed, and let's go back to the main class that has the main method and execute this program again and see what happens. Now you see another line over here saying that constructor is executed. So what happens is, as soon as you create the object of a class, what gets executed is the constructor. So far it was calling a default constructor without any lines of code in the block, so we were not seeing anything over here. But when we added this particular line, we can see output getting printed in the console. So when we create the object, the first thing that gets executed is the constructor of the class, which is very similar to a method, but the difference is the name of the constructor is similar to the name of the class, and constructor does not have any return type. Constructor is not considered as a member of the class. Very important. Now a method and the variables, they are called as members of the class. They are considered as members of the class. Constructor is not a member. It cannot be called from another method like you can call a method from another method. It gets executed automatically whenever you create the object of the class like this. If I create another object one more time, this constructor will get called. What is the main benefit or main requirement or main objective of the constructor? We can use constructor to initialize the variables of the class. So let us create another constructor in this case. Let us say public road toll, and let's create two arguments over here. First is string type and another is integer tire count. And what this constructor is going to do is whatever is the value user is going to specify for type and tires count, those values are going to get assigned to the type and tires count of this class. So we are going to use like this dot type is equal to type, and this dot tires count is equal to. Okay, now let's focus on this keyword over here. Nothing to get confused in this case. This simply means this is the member of this class, the current class. This simply means the current class. When you say this dot type, it is simply going to specify the type. We are referring to the type member variable of the class, road tool class, not type as in the type argument of this method. Now whenever we have this confusion, like we have the argument name same as that of the class variable name, then to distinguish in between what refers to the class, what refers to the argument, we use this. So when you add this to any variable, it means that variable is of the class, it's a member of the class. And when you do not add, by default it is considered as the method level variable. Okay, so this over here is the method level variable. Whatever is the value that we specify to this variable argument, that argument's value will get added to the class level variable. So type will get the value from type argument, tires count will get the value from tires count argument, whatever user will specify. Okay, now let us see how we can use this constructor to create the object. Let's go back to the main class and create another object. So toll road rt2 is equal to new toll road, and let's assign the values to the arguments of this constructor. Now if we do not provide any arguments, then by default this first constructor will be called. But if we want to use the second constructor with the arguments, then we need to provide the values for the first and second argument. The first argument is the type, so let us say truck, and second argument is number of tires, let us say 6. And then we can directly call the calculate toll method, because right now assigning values to the type and tire count is already taken care by the constructor, so I no need to do these two steps. That's how constructors can be very handy. When you create the object, you can initialize the variables of the class. Now when you say calculate toll and run this method again, it's going to say your toll amount is 20, which is getting printed from line number 14 over here. So what we have another constructor with the arguments. Also we have a default constructor, like we should not say default to this right now because we have specified it over here. So we'll say we have a no argument constructor and we have an argument constructor. Likewise, you can create multiple constructors. Only thing is you should distinguish in terms of arguments that you specify. Inside a class, you can have multiple constructors as long as they distinguish in terms of the arguments, either by the data type of the arguments or the number of arguments. And this concept is called as constructor overloading. Do you remember the concept of method overloading we have seen in the method overloading session? Same concept over here. In case of method overloading, we can have methods of same name inside a class as long as they differ in terms of arguments, either by the data type of the arguments or the order or the number of arguments. Same concept over here. You can have constructor with the same name. Of course, constructor have the same name. That's the name of the class. So you can have multiple constructors in the class. Only thing is they should distinguish in terms of arguments. Okay, so this concept is called as constructor overloading, having the multiple constructors. So it is the choice of the person who creates the object, whether to call the constructor without any argument or with argument or whatever constructor he or she wants to call. So this is the concept of constructor overloading. Now one more important concept. We have seen that Java assumes a default constructor without any argument and without any code in the block if we do not specify a constructor. And that is why we are able to create the object like this. That is why we are able to create an object with the default constructor like this. But as soon as we provide a constructor, say we are creating this constructor and then we don't want this one. So as soon as we create an explicit constructor, Java will stop assuming that constructor. You see the error is being thrown, a compilation error is getting created in this case. It is saying that you no longer can create the object of the class by calling the constructor that is a no argument constructor, because now you have a constructor that has arguments, you have to use it. Java will stop assuming that default constructor. So far we have created objects of our classes by using this one, and there was no constructor of any kind in any class, and it was fine by then. As long as you do not have any constructor, Java is ready to assume a blank constructor without any arguments. But now that when we have a constructor explicitly created, Java will force us to use that constructor in that case. Now, in such a case, if you still want to allow users to create an object, then you have to add it explicitly like this. You have to add it explicitly. Okay, that's the concept of default constructor. Default is assumed only until there is no constructor created in the class. As soon as you create a constructor, then you have to use whatever is created. Okay, so let's go back to the constructor and let us revise back these concepts. A constructor is a block of code similar to a method that gets executed when the instance of a class is created. Then generally used to initialize the member variables of a class. Over here, what we are using this constructor is to initialize the member variables. So whatever values the user is passing at the time of creating the object, those values are getting added to the variables of the class, member variables of the class. So type and tires count. Then constructor name is same as that of name of the class. Yes. Constructor does not have any return type. It does not return any value. Fine. And constructor overloading. Very important concept. Also, this concept is important from interview point of view. So thank you so much for watching this video. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments.